I'm John Duval. Welcome to the Scriptural Way Bible Study. The Scriptural Way Bible Study is brought to you by the Seminole Point Church of Christ, located at 16300 North May Avenue, Oklahoma City. On behalf of the elders and members of the Seminole Point Church of Christ, I would like to thank you for your interest in spiritual matters. Now, let's take our Bibles and seek the Scriptural way. A study through 3 John. Good evening. I'm John Duval.
I'm John Hall.
And this is a Scriptural Way broadcast. Well, John, we're absent Dale this evening.
I thought something was missing.
Yeah. He went on a cruise a couple weeks ago, and something about it tanking over in the water, and, well, no, that's not exactly accurate. He is on a cruise this week, and hopefully it's in the upright position it's supposed to be in. But we'll miss him this evening. Things going well today?
Well, we're on a live broadcast. This is probably one of those times when you ask that question and you're expected to just go, yeah, doing pretty good.
All things being considered, kind of a medium type disposition?
Medium to medium rare.
They used to say fair to middling. Fair to middling, yeah. It's interesting. You oftentimes will ask the question of people, how are you doing today? And very seldom does someone say, well, I'm glad you asked. Let me share with you my troubles. But
I'm not going to share any troubles tonight.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you with us for our study tonight. I hope everything is going well in your area of the world. The Scriptural Way broadcast, as you know, is brought to you by the Seminole Point Church of Christ, located in Edmond, Oklahoma. If you'd like to have more information about us, you can go to www.seminolepoint.org. That's Seminole Point, Pointe.org. Or click on the link at the top of the page after the broadcast, and you can have more information. We just recently started adding articles to the church's website. We've been doing articles for about a little over 4 years now in the bulletin, but I haven't gotten to the point of getting them fully on our website. Well, we have a new member of the congregation who's gung-ho to do that exact stuff, so I said, here. And so he's getting them loaded up for us. So feel free to make use of those if you would like, if you find them beneficial. The majority of them are written by me. Some are written by a couple of our elders actually, and then some I'll pull from other preachers as fill in, because I think they may have a good article or good point as well. Tonight, though, we're going to be looking at 3 John. 3 John. If you haven't downloaded a copy of the PDF file, please feel free to do so at this time. It is located beneath the viewing window. And that's the PDF copy to 3 John. If this is your first time with us, you'll notice the chat room to the right-hand side of the viewing window. Please join in that chat room. If you'd like to hit guest and pick a name, do so, and participate in the study. Help us out. If this is your first time, let us know where you're from. We'd love to kind of have an idea of your location, and give us a name you'd like for us to call you, and we'll be happy to pull you into our study. Questions or comments most certainly are all welcomed. Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at 3 John this evening. I will say before we get into this, that where we're going to after 3 John is 3 kind of in-between lessons. Originally, over 100 episodes ago, when we started this Tuesday night broadcast, it was a classroom setting. In the first 13 weeks, we looked at 6 lessons entitled Extreme Personal Makeover. And several months back, we redid the first 3 lessons to kind of pull them back into this format. And after we're finished with 3 John, we're going to do the last 3 lessons in that series. Again, pulling it into this format, different than the classroom format. But after that, our plans are to do a series of lessons looking at what does the Bible say about. Now, we have started here at the congregation. That is our theme for this year. And one Sunday a month, except for 2 months out of the year, we're going to do every Sunday. We're going to look at a series of questions or subjects. What does the Bible say about? So I thought it would be beneficial to kind of bring that into our study. But it'll be probably 2 or 3 months before we ever get to that point. But that's kind of what you have forward, hopefully. Looking forward to our future studies here. Well, John, this is what would be a third letter, a third epistle that we have from John. Undoubtedly, he wrote more, but these are ones that were kept by the providence of God for our benefit and for us to learn from and to grow as his children. Like the second letter, this one is equally short. One scholar speculated probably what he wrote would have fit on one page of the papyri, what he would have written on. Very short letter there. The second letter, we speculated, based on some commentators' thought, that it was written to a local congregation. Difference of opinion on that. This particular letter, there is no question. He addresses it to a fellow by the name of Gaius. Now, there are different Gaiuses found within the Bible, so we're not sure if it's one of the same or if it's a different one altogether. But it was one with whom John was well acquainted. And probably, now this is purely speculation, probably he had written other letters to the congregation there, but Diotrephes rejected them. And I thought this next theory was unique to me, but I came across it in a commentary as put forth as a possible theory, that maybe the second letter, that the congregation that he wrote that to was the same one that Gaius attended. And Diotrephes rejected that one, theoretically. And so he wrote one to Gaius. But we don't know. It's pure speculation. But none of that really alters the meaning of what we find here within the letter. So let's go ahead and take a few minutes and look at John's salutations there towards Gaius in the first 4 verses. And John, we'll start out with the first 2, if you wouldn't mind reading those, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Verse 1 and 2, the elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers.
Okay. You'll notice here, as we said a while ago, we don't know exactly which Gaius this was, but it was one whom John had great affection for, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. That's how we know Gaius was a member of the body of Christ and was therefore in fellowship with John and the other apostles. And you'll note there that what he's praying for in the first 2 verses is to prosper in all things, be in health, just as your soul prospers. And we don't have much about that in the outline, but I think that is a very interesting point, that while he prays for his physical prosperity, not riches, but that things would prosper for him, he recognizes or acknowledges his soul's prosperity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important.
Yeah, I think he's placed an emphasis on there, and I think we'll see that in verse 4 a little bit as well. When we get down to there and kind of help connect those 2 points together, that he's not just praying simply that he would go and have great wealth and fame and notoriety and then that be it.
Right.
But as his soul prospers, as he is faithful in his work and in his service to God, he prayed that good things would happen for him.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing. This is our prayer for all Christians, that things go well. Mm-hmm. Things don't always go well. Things did not always go well for Paul, but his soul always did prosper.
Right. And that's a good point to remember here, too. We don't know what Gaius' state was. Maybe he was struggling physically concerning prosperity.
Yeah. He might have been suffering at the hands of Diotrephes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he had some sort of influence or something there. Yeah, never know. All right, well, let's look at verses 3 and 4 now. Observe here what John takes a moment to rejoice in. We read, "For I rejoice greatly when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." So John took delight. He rejoiced in the fact that he had heard back from somebody who had testified to Gaius being in the truth and the truth being in Gaius. And so it suggests here that John at some previous opportunity had taught Gaius, had spent time with Gaius, and had known Gaius. It is speculated that John was currently in Ephesus when he wrote this. So where Gaius was at, we're not quite certain. But it was a congregation that John dearly loved and expressed the joy there over those brethren there in that they were walking in the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think this really makes it clear what John's stressing here, what the focus really is altogether when he says he has no greater joy not to hear of physical prosperity,
right,
but to hear that my children walk in truth.
Exactly.
And it's interesting when you connect some of these dots here as well. I was going to look at a couple passages real quick.
Sure.
Over in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 19 and 20, what Paul says to the Thessalonian brethren here. Chapter 2, verse 19, he says, "For what is our hope or joy?"
Okay.
As John's saying here, he has great joy in this. He says, "What is our hope, our joy, or crown of rejoicing? Is it not even you in the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ at His coming? For you are our glory and joy."
That's exactly right.
Those that had been converted to Christ, Paul says, you're our joy, as those who've been out teaching and preaching. Yeah. And it's interesting to me that here, when you look at that, one other passage, and I'll go back to 2 John, but 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 18.
You say 2 Corinthians?
1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 18. He just finished this whole section here previous to that, talking about taking prospering for their preaching. You know, the fact that he didn't take anything for when he came and brought them the word.
Sure.
Right.
With church.
But he would have had the authority to do so.
Exactly. Right.
But he didn't do so for their benefit. But then he says, "What is my reward then?" He said, I didn't get any physical reward for what I was doing.
Right.
And I wasn't looking for any physical reward. I wouldn't even accepted it, he says.
Yeah.
But then he says here, "What is my reward then? That when I preach the gospel, I may present the gospel of Christ without charge, that I may not abuse my authority in the gospel." And then he goes on to talk about how, for though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant. So he's become like the Jews to the Jews, he's become like the Gentiles to the Gentiles, so that he could convert them to Christ. And he says, that's my reward. And he said earlier, what his joy was. When we looked at last week, 2 John verse 8, where John mentions here, "Look to yourselves that we do not lose the things we worked for, but that we receive a full reward." And that gave me just a new perspective maybe on something that should be included in what John was talking about last week when he said we. Maybe he's more referring to those that would preach the gospel versus individuals here.
Right.
We, those that have brought the word to you, we want to receive the full reward. Well, the full reward is that your souls will be saved in heaven.
That's a very good point. Because it's very possible at this time John was the last remaining apostle. More than by tradition, all the other ones had died by this point. And he very well may have been referring to other teachers that he had taught, that he had worked with, and they were also out there teaching the word and their reward.
Right.
And this is a very good point. Very good point.
And so here, again, back to verse 4 to tie it all together, there's no greater joy than that the children walk in truth, knowing that those children who are walking in truth will receive that inheritance of an eternal home.
Exactly. I think it's exactly right. And that's the way that we should look at it as well. The joy that we have, the joy in the Lord, is the joy of the reward that He's promised us if we strive faithfully to follow Him.
Right.
Yeah, exactly right. We'd like to hear what you think about this subject. Don't hesitate to participate in the chat room. Just jump right in there with your comments and questions. Before we go on to verse 5, we'll go ahead and take our first break for this evening, and then we'll come back and kind of continue looking at what John has to say here to Gaius. Again, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and take this opportunity to put them into the chat room. And John, he's monitoring over there, and he'll be happy to bring it into the discussion. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
I'm Ron Witt, one of the elders of the Seminole Point Church of Christ. On behalf of the elders and members of the Seminole Point Church of Christ, I would like to invite you to be our guest at any of our worship services and Bible classes. The meeting place of the Seminole Point Church of Christ is located at 16300 North May Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, zip code 73013. The Seminole Point Church of Christ meets Sunday mornings at 9:30 for Bible classes, 10:30 for worship service, and 5 p.m. for our afternoon worship service. We also have Bible classes on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Whether you live in Oklahoma City area or you are traveling through Oklahoma City, we would love to have you come and be our guest. We have Bible classes for all ages. At the Seminole Point Church of Christ, our focus is to teach only the Word of God. Rest assured that when you visit with us, you will find that we will appeal only to God's precious Word. Now, let us return to our study.
You know, John, as we look at verses 5 through 6 here, this particular section actually from 5 through 8, we're going to see John encouraging Gaius to continue showing hospitality. Mm-hmm. And it is a very specific hospitality which shows the other side of the coin in comparison to what he dealt with in 2 John. Mm-hmm. And we'll look at that as we go through this. Mm-hmm. But if you would go ahead and read for us verses 5 and 6 of 3 John.
Sure. Verses 5 and 6 says, "Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers, who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well."
Okay. Consider what he says here. There were many, or what John is talking about here. There are many people in the first century who would travel around preaching the word. I mean, we have people to do that today, but they didn't have some of the means that we are very blessed to have. Mm-hmm. It's very possible for us to have a lesson like this, to study the Word of God, and brethren, as they do in the Philippines, participate. Mm-hmm. That would not have been possible during the first century. And so you had brethren in the first century who would travel, taking the Word of God, going from town to town, sometimes going from house to house. And there would be times when on their journey they would need help. They would need a faithful brother to put them up in a motel. Or not in a motel, but in their house. It might have been they didn't have the money to stay in some inn or something like that. As a matter of fact, when you look at the Apostle Paul, there are several instances of him referencing individuals who helped him when he was on his journeys there. Mm-hmm. Let's look at one of them, Acts chapter 21, verse 5 there, where the Apostle Paul writes, "When we had come to the end of those days, we departed and went on our way, and they all accompanied us with wives and children till we were out of the city, and we knelt down on the shore and prayed." They had been staying with them, staying with the brethren. The brethren had put them up, had given them a place to stay and food to eat. Romans chapter 15, verse 24, "Whenever I journey to Spain, I shall come to you, for I hope to see you on my journey and to be helped on my way there by you, if first I may enjoy your company for a while." So we have here instances, and there's another one that we won't read in 2 Corinthians 1:16, where Paul acknowledges brethren who helped him along the way. Mm-hmm. Now in our country today, I don't know how we think about that during a gospel meeting. Either we'll put the preacher up in a home or we'll put them up in a motel, something other like that. But truly to have a preacher who travels from city to city and relying upon the kindness of brethren to put them up, I don't know if that happens to the same level as it did back then, at least in our country. Mm-hmm. Now the brethren in the Philippines, I think in that area, it probably happens a good bit more as it does in other areas of the world. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I like the way, it's just, you see this word here that John uses for Gaius, and it just brings to mind a lot of the different ways, or different words that were used when they were addressing individuals they were writing to, who they cared fondly for. Right. And we just don't tend to do that anymore these days. I mean, you see here, "to the beloved Gaius," and then in verse 5, "beloved." One Christian writing that to another Christian, you just really can see his true feelings for Gaius. Right. And not because of some, we share the same interest of basketball and so we enjoy going to basketball games together, but purely because of his understanding of Gaius' faith. Right. And the fact that it was as it should be, just as his was, and just as he was trying to preach and teach to others around. That brought him very close, affectionately, to Gaius.
That's true.
And I just wonder sometimes if I know I've had circumstances like that where other brethren I've connected with at some level like that, but I don't think nearly like we see in the Bible with the apostles. It seemed very, very commonplace. Yeah. That was foremost on their minds, and what really brought their affections to their peak was that they were with other brethren, other saints.
Well, it's possible that this could have been a standard greeting. Like if I want to write a letter, I'll write, "Dear so-and-so." But I don't. Even if it was a common greeting from an apostle, from John, I believed he meant it in all sincerity, as the apostle Paul did. And there is the danger, I think, of sometimes people thinking, well, we need to speak in this manner, and so they put on this front. Every time they address brethren, it's brother, it's beloved. And again, I'm not opposed to that as long as it's coming from a sincere heart. And I think you're absolutely right. We don't see, I mean, I would feel kind of odd if I called you up and said, "Hey, beloved John, how would you like to go and see beloved Travis?" And take the three of us to fishing. I mean, in our culture, it might be a little bit different, but still, with that being said, those are just words. You're looking at the feelings expressed that those words came from. We are to be having that. You have no doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like the way you mentioned here, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers. We don't want to gloss over that word faithfully,
Right.
Earnestly, not half-hearted. This wasn't the case where if someone were to come and ask him and really ask in earnest and really need something, that he would give in.
Right.
This is the type of attitude that he was searching for those that might need something.
That's exactly right.
If you're coming to where I am and you're bringing the truth with you in any case, I'm going to go try to find some way to help you.
Right.
That seems to be what Gaius' attitude is here.
He opened his doors to them, his heart
Right.
and his arms. Yeah.
Right. Daniel mentioned in the chat room about that idea here where it talks about using the word strangers. Obviously we see here, it seems that these are brothers and sisters never met before, that they are showing hospitality to, and that's the case. I mean, they didn't know them before they showed up, but they knew their fruits. They knew what they were teaching. They knew they weren't false teachers.
That's right.
And they knew their hearts in that case because they were making it evident by the words that they were bringing. And so, therefore, they were willing to do whatever they could to help that individual out.
That's right.
Rosalita brings up Matthew 10, verse 9, "Provide neither gold, nor silver, nor brass in your purses, nor scrip for your journey, neither two coats, neither shoes, nor yet stays, for the workman is worthy of his meat." Talking about the commission that Jesus sent them out on initially, that they weren't to go packing up big bags for everything they might need for the journey and have it all with them and ready to go. They were to go teach the word, and they would be provided for while they were on their way doing so.
Now, that is a very interesting reference that Rosalita brings up, because in that case in point, Jesus told them to take nothing. Now, when he sent them on the Great Commission, he says, "Before I told you not to take this, now take it. Told you before not to take a sword, take a sword." Peter says, "We got two of them." The Lord said, "That's fine." And but the same mentality, though, we see, though. Just as on the limited commission, they were to rely upon people to provide for them, and the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit's going to play a large part in that as well. People were relying upon people during this day and time.
Yeah. One of the, just a side note that I don't know if we see this in the text here, but to me it makes sense that why do you not go and in this case try to purposely, as we look back to what Paul did, when he didn't go out and try to take gain from his preachings.
Right.
And you see those that go out sometimes, and maybe in the 60s or 70s, sometime in that time period where there was a little bit more frequent in America, the traveling preacher, as it were, and they'd set up a tent and they would do some great preaching and shouting and yelling and foot stomping, and then collection time. And so in this case, I think Paul in that situation was basically saying, well, I don't want anybody to think, for any reason, I don't want anybody to even have a possible inclination that I'm trying to get paid for what I'm doing. Well, and that might be the reason I'm out here.
Well, that's a good point. He did take support from other churches, and as you said a while ago, recognized their right, and he kind of laments that he might have done them wrong and not letting them help him. But he didn't want to create an occasion, like you said, that someone would say, he's only preaching for the money.
Right.
Yeah. There's a movie from the late 60s, and I can't remember the name of it now. It's about some preacher, and caused a lot of scandal at the time period. I say a great preacher. It was about this woman, and she had a traveling religious show. And this guy was a con artist, and he kind of jumped on board for a while. And boy, the way that he talked and the way that he sang and the way that he moved everybody was just incredible. And of course, I've forgotten the name of the movie, the name of that guy, and the actor that played the guy. But the point is, though, is that you are exactly right. Paul relied upon the kind-heartedness of brethren to help him. Yeah.
Daniel mentioned off of something we mentioned a moment ago. He says, I can personally attest to that. I say I love you to many brothers and sisters, and I often get strange looks or replies.
Well, we love you too, Daniel. You don't get any strange looks from us. Well, and again, if we force ourselves to say I love you and call each other brother, it becomes kind of a rote there.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with genuinely expressing to one another our love for one another. Not simply our friendship, but our love for one another's brethren in Christ. Yeah. Peter says love the brotherhood. Right. Doesn't mean you have it and you don't say it. You express it as well.
And that's a good point. Everybody expresses it differently, so
well, they do.
Sometimes there's a comfort level there. Somebody might not be comfortable saying "I love you" to somebody, or addressing them with some personal words that are a little bit more, towards that nature, like beloved or something along those lines. But again, the most important thing, like you said, is do we show that, and what we do for them, and what we're willing to provide or assist, or what those types of things. In our actions and our words, or in the way that we treat one another. Right. And foremost spiritually.
Exactly.
As John's mentioning here.
That's right. Foremost spiritually.
Yep.
One thing to point out before we kind of look at verses 7 and 8 there, in Galatians 6, verse 6, Paul says, and this goes in line with this, that let him who has taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. And that's not limited to just the local preacher, but as the context of what we're looking at in 3 John would apply to this as well. Okay. Well, let's continue on here. Don't hesitate to let us know what you think about this with your comments and questions. But let's look at verses 7 and 8 now. These brethren whom Gaius had helped, notice what John says about them. He continues by saying, because they went forth for his name's sake. That's the strangers. Those are the ones that Gaius had helped. Because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth. When he says we therefore ought to receive such, he's talking about receive those who are going forth teaching the truth, going forth for his name's sake. Now, one thing to note, it's interesting that he says taking nothing from the Gentiles. This cannot be Gentiles by race, because that distinction had been basically nailed to the cross for all intents and purposes. That middle wall of partition had been torn down. More than likely, he's talking about the sinners of the world. In other words, he would not go and take help from, and these people would not go and take help from the idol worshipers, from the Jews. They would only accept the help from their brethren. And you think about it, and there's nothing, I don't perceive that John is saying there would have been anything wrong with them taking support, but it might impugn their motives, at least in the eyes of some, to know, oh, he was being supported by that guy that worshiped the goddess Diana. I bet his preaching was soft. Right. And at least that's pure speculation as to what John meant by that. But it's very possible here that that's what he was talking about.
Yeah. My Bible mentions that the word receive there, just as a note, for maybe an important note there, also can be used support. So when you're talking about we therefore ought to receive such, one word that may be used there is to support such.
To support such.
Right.
I think that's a very, very good point there.
And receiving them, obviously, the concept's not too far separated. If you're receiving them, you're supporting them.
You are. Well, that brings us to kind of the opposite of this, as we've talked about last week in 2 John 1, 10 through 11. Where he makes the point there. Matter of fact, we'll read that, 2 John 1, beginning verse 10. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house nor greet him, for he who greets him shares in his evil deeds. This is the exact opposite. And so if they were to greet someone who brought the evil deeds, they were participants with that. If they received someone who brought the truth, they were in fellowship with them, participant with that.
Yeah, Daniel Winchell, English Standard Version uses support.
Support, so, yeah. And I think that's a good one. Travis put up here a little private message, and Rhonda helped me out as well. That movie was Elmer Gantry. And it's a very interesting movie. Lansing's one that first told me about it. He said, now if you ever preach like him, we'll fire you. But it's a very interesting movie. Like I said, very controversial for the day. It caused a lot of uproar and everything. But now it's mild by comparison to everything that's out there, of course. But that being said, we need to go on to verse 9. But before we do that, we'll go ahead and take our next break. In this next section, he's going to talk about a fellow by the name of Diotrephes, and his wickedness and his evilness. And I tell you what, you look around the world today, and I strongly suspect there are many Diotrephes in many religious groups today. And so we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Rhonda. I'm a member of the Seminole Point Church of Christ in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The Seminole Point Church of Christ has outstanding Bible classes for all ages. We have teachers who are dedicated to teaching God's Word in insightful and energetic ways. Please come visit us and bring your children. They will love our Bible classes, and you will be benefited.
Hello, my name is Dale Decker. I am one of 4 elders here at Seminole Point Church of Christ. We are very fortunate to have a Bible-loving group of Christians here at Seminole. Our Bible class teachers are second to none. We have Bible classes for all age groups. Our goal is heaven, and we make every effort to ensure that the Word of God is taught at every age group. We hope that you will come and check us out. You will find that we are a very friendly and loving congregation. We are located at 16,300 May Avenue in Oklahoma City. And now back to our study.
John, would you mind reading for us verse 9?
Verse 9. I can do that.
Thank you.
Verse 9, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us.
All right, John had previously written to the church where Gaius attended. And that's why I think that there might be a measure of merit to the speculation that 2 John might have been that letter. Possibly. And you think about it, the contents of that second letter would have been identifying those who rejected the deity of Christ, rejected that he came in the flesh. Maybe that's what Diotrephes taught. And so possibly that was the letter that he rejected. We don't know, though. But we find here, and this is more to the point, it says that he loves to have the preeminence among them. He wanted to be the top dog, the king of the hill. And what is so sad is we see that today. Now, we don't know. He might have been an elder of the congregation at one time. He might have been the local preacher of the congregation. Or he could have just been a very strong-willed member. We just don't know. But the fact is, he exercised a selfish authority over the congregation there.
Mm-hmm. I found it interesting that John mentioned there in verse 4, and then go back to verse 9, he says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. I find it interesting that he kind of preludes his statements about Diotrephes here. I'm skipping down. Setting up a positive example.
Yes.
You know, here's a positive example that Gaius would relate to and understand and appreciate. And then comes in with verse 9 to present that other side of things. Here's someone who's obviously not, sole concern is not that he wants to hear about his children walking in truth.
That's right.
That's not what Diotrephes really is concerned about here. Like you say, his concern is about what kind of fame, what kind of notoriety can I get? How can I get people to look up to me, irregardless of what's taught or whether it's truth or not.
That's right. All he was concerned with was himself. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
And Daniel mentioned, before we get too far on, because this was a good point that I failed to mention also. I saw this in the commentaries this evening. I thought it was interesting as well. But Daniel says it is neat that he calls these fellow workers, and he talks about in verse 8, we therefore ought to receive or support such, that we may become fellow workers for the truth. And so they're fellow workers for the truth for these individuals simply by the fact that they were supporting them. They might not have the ability to teach. They might not be able to get up and stand in front of a large audience and speak the truth as they might want to do. But these individuals who are coming and going did.
That's right.
And so as they supported them, they became fellow workers with them.
Well, the Apostle Paul, he on several occasions, or on one occasion specifically, he talks about the brethren who had extended to him the right hand of fellowship. Mm-hmm. You know, and what he's talking about there is in their efforts to help support him, they had extended to him that right hand of fellowship. And and this is the same thing that he's saying. You know, by helping these people, although we're not going, right beside them door to door. We are fellow workers because we're helping them.
Yeah, I think
that's a good point.
I thought that was a really good point, because I don't know that I ever really put that together with us today, as we support the preacher here, as we contribute to this local congregation, and then as this local congregation decides, the elders and the congregation decide to assist other preachers who are preaching the truth. Essentially, some of the contribution that the members here are making is going to support other preachers to help them to preach the truth in these other locations. And so we are fellow workers with them.
That's exactly right. In Galatians 2, verse 9, and when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that had been given to me, they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised. In this case in point, kind of agreement, approval of them. But it's still the idea of approving of it, helping, supporting them, the right hand of fellowship. Yeah. It's a very, very good thought there with that. One of the things that we want to comment on about Diotrephes' selfishness is, of course, this goes contrary to all teachings regarding godliness and humility within Christians. Matter of fact, Paul, in his letter to the church in Philippi, in Philippians 2, 3 through 4, he says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others." Now, this was written, I'm not sure, maybe 40 years prior to John's letter to Gaius. But the very thing that Diotrephes was doing was in full violation of the attitude that Paul taught the church there in Philippi. And there is no place for it within the local congregation.
Right. You know, I don't know if this makes any sense. It makes sense in my brain, so I'll say it.
Go right ahead, John.
You know, it talks about here where it says, "Let each esteem others better than himself." And sometimes I think you see a situation where someone might be able to actually fool themselves into thinking they are actually doing that when they're not. And sometimes they may be putting others first, and it may be a select group of others that they're putting first, or maybe one or two others who have some opinion or idea, and they are then putting them first and trying to continue. You know, maybe it's an eldership, and they are following along the lines of those one or two individuals because they're gaining brownie points with some of those individuals.
And in their mind, they're humble.
Right. And so I think we need to make sure that when we say we are esteeming others better than ourselves, it's not with this fake sense. It's not under this impression that, well, yeah, I'm giving into all of these, things over here, and so therefore all these people look to me and appreciate what I've done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because oftentimes in that situation, they kind of look down or disregard the other people who aren't at the same level, and they're focused on serving these people right here.
And then again, truth goes out the window in that circumstance, because you're not truly esteeming others better than yourself if you're neglecting what needs to be done, truth, simply because some individuals who you want to look up to you are wanting you to do certain things.
That's right. And this danger isn't limited to only the preachers or only elders who would be in a position of the oversight of the local congregation, but it could fall upon any member. It could be the song leader. It could be someone who's very elaborate with their prayers. Anybody that's in a position where other people look to him could very well fall prey to this. I think about in the denomination world, and even within some churches of Christ, there's this huge movement of women. I mean, in the conservative Church of Christ, we slight women. We treat them lesser than the men. They don't get to stand up in public and do stuff. So, we just look down upon them and rub them down underneath our feet. That's not it at all. And matter of fact, we've said this before, during the Lord's Supper, sure, there's men waiting on the table, but what the woman does in her pew is more important than the man who carries the dish. The song leader stands up and makes sure the congregation's singing decently and orderly. The woman in her pew is just as important as that man, because she's singing praises unto God. And so there's no work within the church that you can say, well, the woman is lesser than the man because she's not doing this role. She's equal, because what she's doing is just as important. But I think what happens is you may have some, this is not to say all of them are this way, who push for this, but you may have some who want the preeminence. And so they think they have every right to not teach, not preach, but the preeminence. That is perceived. And let me tell you what, there is, as much as some may think, there is no preeminence in preaching. I mean, sure, you get stand up there and preach to people, but every word you say is being questioned and looked at, turned over backwards. They're listening to make sure you teach the truth, and if you don't, you've got to answer for that.
And you got to answer even when you just make a slip up every once in a while, huh?
Every once in a while? Was it Levantine?
You know, I think that's a big challenge too. From the side of someone who has a ability in the serving the church, whether it be song leader or whatever, whatever it might be. If you're in a smaller congregation, you're the only song leader in the congregation, or the only one that they seem to choose Sunday morning, because you do have an ability to better lead the singing.
Sure.
And maybe some of the more novice song leaders aren't quite up to that level yet, and so they want to make sure sometimes Sunday morning and worship services are a little bit more in order and don't have any major issues. And so some may look to that person and look down on them because they have this ability.
Right.
And I think that's a challenge, and probably more so when people have monetary ability. When you have those members who are much more wealthier, and they have the ability to give more, they have the ability to help people more. If they are very free to do that, I think that can present a challenge for them, because some people a lot of times look down on them and think, well, they're just showing their money, because they're doing all these things. They're just showing their money. And they're truly, honestly just doing it out of the goodness of their heart to try to help and assist somebody.
That's
or
right.
to help the church one way or the other.
1 Corinthians 12 kind of deals with that, in that you've got some who say, I'm not part of the body because I can't do what they do. And others say, well, you're not a part of the body because you can't do this or that. Kind of looking both. And one looks down on themselves and the other looks down on them.
Right.
I think we have some good comments in the chat room.
Yeah, Rosalito mentioned here a moment ago, says, and simply members inviting people around to join a scriptural Bible study, then you see basically showing of support.
Exactly. That's a very, very good illustration, Rosalito.
And Salvador agreed with Brother Rosalito, and then Daniel, I was going to say Daniel did make a point as you were speaking a few moments ago, just to kind of remind you, I think. He said, just like behind every good preacher is a great preacher's wife.
I think Rhonda may have sent him a private message. Say this. I won't go any farther past that. But that's exactly right. And when a person perceives their preeminence within the church, they are already in trouble with the Lord, because it's an imaginary position. And it's caused many preachers to fall as a result of that.
And we see here in verse 10, Diotrephes actually standing opposed to the teaching of the apostles and putting sound brethren out of the church.
That's true. Let's look at that.
It says in verse 10 there, therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, prating against us with malicious words, and not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church.
Yeah, this guy was extremely selfish in his arrogance towards the people there. Like you said, he prated against the apostles there with malicious words, or John and the other teachers that would have been at the time. And not only that, as you said a while ago, but if you had a brother that came in that stood opposed to Diotrephes, he would kick him out of the church. And you can kind of imagine that. Some member moving to the area, and they're going, well, let's go start worshiping here. And they start seeing some things and start asking some questions, and Diotrephes right on top of them said, no, you got to go. You got to leave. And it's just, the thing is, it happens today.
Yeah, sad situation. You can just see Diotrephes flexing his muscles.
Sure, absolutely.
When this comes up. And the sad part is, there had to be some members of the congregation of wherever this individual was that was allowing that to continue.
That's right.
There was nobody telling Diotrephes and standing up to him. Not saying there was nobody. There could have been some disagreements there.
Right.
But obviously it was allowed to go on enough to where he's forbidden people to even assemble there.
That's right. And if it was a larger congregation, his influence might have been over a section, and not being able to affect other people like Gaius. John doesn't accuse Gaius of going along with him.
Right.
It could be that maybe Gaius was one of the ones Diotrephes had kicked out. And so John is going to come and he will address Diotrephes face to face about it. Never know.
Right.
The English Standard Version, where it says prating against us with malicious words, it says talking wicked nonsense against us. And you can kind of see Diotrephes standing up in the pulpit of the day, talking publicly against what John was teaching. Maybe he was one of the ones that held to the Gnostic teaching, and maybe that's what he was teaching there in a public fashion.
Yeah, I think, and talking wicked nonsense, I think goes along with this as well. In the commentary I was looking at, talked about the prating being something that you might spread falsehoods about, and then malicious words would again reflect more that wicked, that sharp tongue.
That's right.
Attack against the apostles there.
I think that's exactly right, and it's a very good description of what he was doing. That's right.
So in one sense, he may have spread just enough lie to be able to get away with the malicious words.
Right.
Because the malicious words may not have been wrong if what he was trying to say was right. Well, in other words, if he was trying to be hard against someone teaching false doctrine, he may have needed to use some strong words to get them to understand how important it was that they would refute these individuals. But on the downside, that's not the case. It was just spreading lies and then coming across with those malicious words.
Well, I'll tell you have to be careful what congregation you're going to choose to exercise that in. I saw a gospel preacher one time stand up before a congregation who was invited in to speak. And he picked one man, and I won't get into the reasons why, but he said, this man is a liar, and laid forth his man is a liar. And the man didn't attend there. He was preaching somewhere else. But what he didn't know is the majority of the members knew this man. And he had preached from that same pulpit and was well loved by the brethren there. And they did not take kindly to this preacher calling him a liar. And if the people don't know the one you're talking about, then you can call him a liar all they want. They'll believe you. But if they know the man you're talking about, then you'll be called to the carpet. And he was. He was. Well, let's go ahead and take our last break for the evening. And on the other side of the break, we will resume our study with verse 11. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Hello there. I am John Duval. I am a member of and the preacher for the Seminole Point Church of Christ. Please allow me a few minutes of your time to share with you some information about the Seminole Point Church of Christ. Seminole Point Church of Christ is under the oversight of 5 elders who guide the congregation in their service to God. These elders lead a very faithful group of people who love God and follow His Word. The Seminole Point Church of Christ has Bible classes for all ages, which meet every Sunday morning at 9:30 and every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. Our Bible class teachers are dedicated to helping educate our children in the Word of the Lord and in the work of His church. On behalf of the members of the Seminole Point Church of Christ, I can tell you that our goal is heaven, and that we make every effort to ensure the Word of God is taught to every age group. It is our hope and prayer that you will take the opportunity to come be our guest and to learn more about us. You will find that we are a friendly and a loving congregation. Our place of worship is located at 16300 North May Avenue, Edmond, Oklahoma. Now, let us return to our study of the Scriptural Way.
Welcome back to our study this evening. We'll be continuing with verse 11 here in 3 John. After he finishes discussing a little bit about Diotrephes, he gives him a reminder to imitate what is good.
Okay.
And so we see here in verse 11, John says, "Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God."
That's right. He's showing a clear difference between light and day, between Diotrephes and everybody else.
Right.
and telling Gaius to imitate the ones who walk worthy, who walk the truth, and don't imitate the ones who are evil.
Right. This is a very good, nice transition there, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, very smooth. And even in his refuting of Diotrephes, he keeps it to the truth.
That's right.
He doesn't prat against him with evil words.
He just calls him evil.
Right. He just says exactly what
That's right.
what the situation is, and then he says, "Beloved, do not imitate what is evil."
That's right.
And so some implication there, obviously, of what he was previously discussing in verses 9 and 10.
I think so. But it's a good lesson for us today when we teach our children. Pick the right pattern to imitate, to follow. It's that simple. And if someone is good, if they're righteous and wholesome, imitate them, not those who are evil.
Right. And it's interesting, too, that we see that lesson, that principle, it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about any math subject you can pick. When a teacher gives you a pattern to follow to get the right answer to certain types of problems, if you just follow that pattern, you're going to get the right answer every time. If you follow that pattern for that kind of problem.
You would think.
If you change the pattern, well, barring any mistakes.
Yeah.
We can't help with addition and subtractions, but if you don't follow the pattern, you'll be guaranteed that you'll always get the wrong answer.
That's exactly
You'll never come to the right answer, the right conclusion. And John says here the same thing that Paul says. Imitate the good pattern. There's a pattern out there where to follow. Paul says, I've imitated Christ, and as I've imitated that good pattern, you need to imitate me in that.
That's right.
Don't imitate me because I'm Paul, but imitate me because I'm imitating this pattern of Jesus Christ.
That's exactly right. And and here's the thing, sometimes when you're dealing with copies, the copy of a copy of a copy of it's kind of a degradation from the original. With this should never degrade.
Right.
It should be an exact replica there. Isn't there a specific formula to figuring out a quadratic equation?
I'm sure there is.
Travis? Okay. That's all I know. Well,
no, but of course, unlike math, where there's 2 or 3 different ways you can, there's 2 or 3 patterns on some types of problems. There's only one here.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It figures, doesn't it? Well, let's go ahead and look at a good example, though. Diotrephes was a negative example, a horrible example, I should say. Demetrius. Let's read there in verse 12 there, where John writes, Demetrius has a good testimony from all, and from the truth itself. And we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. Now, little is known about Demetrius. It may be that this Demetrius is the one who was actually carrying the letter. Maybe not a member there where Gaius was at, but possibly the one who carried the letter from John to Gaius. And it's interesting that John says, receive him. There's good testimony about him. The truth also bears witness. And someone says, well, how does the truth bear witness? Well, it's quite simple. You look at what the truth teaches, you compare it to the actions of the one. If the actions of the one are in accordance with what the Bible teaches, then the word has borne witness to the righteousness of that man. If he doesn't obey, then the truth bears witness to his unrighteousness. But not only the truth, but others bore witness to Demetrius and his faithfulness.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We see there that even though we know little about Demetrius, we see enough here that it tells us a lot about him.
Yes.
And we see Demetrius had a good testimony from all. Now, I think just like in any other passage where the word all is used, we have to take that in the context.
Sure.
All not being every human that ever met Demetrius, for Christians were persecuted.
Right.
And so likelihood is there were some who were not Christians. As Demetrius lived his life, they probably wouldn't have given him a good report. They would have wanted to blaspheme him and ridicule him and tear him down. But all in the sense, I think, just like he addresses the beginning of the letter, where he says, the beloved Gaius whom I love in truth. All those that were in the truth give a good testimony of Demetrius.
Exactly.
All those that matter to us are going to give a good testimony of this one. He had a good testimony from the truth itself.
That's right.
We see here.
If we had a member come in from the congregation and say, I want to be an active part of this congregation, I have a list of people that can vouch for me, let's say. If I don't know anybody on the list, I'll look more skeptically at their testimony, so to speak, than I would if I knew the people on the list. Well, yeah, he knows that guy and that guy and that guy. I'll give them a call. And so you're right. I think the idea of the word all would apply to all that mattered in reference to this.
Right.
It's a good point. And he had a good testimony from the truth itself.
Right.
So that's right. That's right. Well, that brings us now to John's closing remarks. Like I said, a very, very short book, and probably the first time we will have finished a single lesson in one single broadcast. Probably.
And we've worked very hard to do that.
Yes, so hard that we bought Dale a ticket on a cruise to get him out of here for tonight. I'm purely jesting. I do miss him being here, but And really, there's not much here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is extremely important and very beneficial.
Right.
So it's easy enough for us to tackle in this area. And the chat room's being very
they're cooperating with
quiet
us to
this evening.
keep it short, I guess. They wanted to see us succeed in a one lesson, one night study.
Probably so, or either they're in complete agreement with us, or we've gone black screen and don't know it.
Yeah.
I got a call today. Bear with me for just a minute. There's a sweet little lady named Mrs. Magoo. That's her name, Mrs. Magoo, down in Texas. And she's unable to get out very much, and so she watches our broadcast all the time. She called me and said, "I couldn't get you Sunday night." I said, "I know. I forgot to turn my microphone on." And she says, "Wasn't there any others that they could use?" I said, "The guys in the booth didn't know." They didn't know, so I apologize.
Well, you were wondering where the phone calls were.
That's it. But it's always good to have folks join us for anything that we do. We view it as you joining us for this study. Sunday morning, I kind of waver on using the terminology, people join us for worship when they're at home watching us. I'm very careful with that. But since you can participate like you are now, I clearly view it as a joining, And so just, but then again, like Mrs. Magoo, and she's watching us tonight. Hi there. She told me that she does feel like she's right here with us because she can't get out. And so our live broadcast or our means, she's told me today she closes her windows and she gets everything ready, gets her Bible out, and she'll sit there and she will, in effect, join in, Right. And so it's always good to have that. But let's look here at verses 13 and 14 in John's closing remarks here. He says, "I had many things to write, but I do not wish to write to you with pen and ink, but I hope to see you shortly, and we shall speak face to face. Peace to you, our friends greet you. Greet the friends by name." Now there is some similarity between 2 John and 3 John, in that the closing of it in verse 12 of 2 John, he writes, "Though I have much to write to you, I would rather not use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk face to face so that our joy may be complete." Now, there's minor differences here. One references pen and ink and the other's paper and ink, but the really significant difference is in 3 John, he says there, "But I hope to see you shortly," suggesting that he was planning to make a trip real quick. Whereas with 2 John, he wasn't. He just wanted to see them. But we see a sense of urgency in 3 John there.
Think that might have had anything to do with Diotrephes?
Everything. Well, most everything to do with Diotrephes. That's exactly right. Well, because when you have someone like him in a local congregation, he's hurting the local church. The previous letters, the second letter, if it was written to a local congregation, he was warning them about supporting people who didn't bring the truth. Now, if it's the same congregation, then he's going to see them shortly anyway.
Right.
If it was the same
Right.
one there. And that brings us to the end of that. Any thoughts or comments, John?
No, Daniel just mentioned that unfortunately he can't drive 12 hours every week to hang out with us at our study here, but he does enjoy it via the broadcast.
Well, I am so glad that you're able to do that. I'm so glad that all of you are able to do this. I realize that for those who are in the Philippines, you may have a slower internet connection, and hopefully the audio broadcast is serving as is being equally beneficial to you as the video broadcast. And we've talked before about trying to do a high-def stream, but it wouldn't be any point at this state in internet technology because most houses, that's a lot of bandwidth to try to send a high-def signal. So hopefully this is sufficient to the task, and hopefully you find it beneficial. I know I do. It takes a lot, in preparation for both of us, for Dale as well, to come together weekly on this. But it's very enjoyable, very, very beneficial, and much more so when you're able to participate and join us for the study. Absolutely. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
No, I agree. I think the audio broadcast, every once in a while on Thursday night when we're watching the Thursday night broadcast, I almost prefer to just hear it. I like to text in the chat room, so I'll have it open.
Yes.
I don't know how our broadcast comes across. It's been a while since I've been at home watching, but with our mouths to the words, I know on Thursday night, though, sometimes it's a second off, syncing up, and so it's almost difficult to watch while you're listening.
Right.
It's almost like a bad Japanese, combination of the words.
So. Greg and Jacob, He's not calling you on comparing your broadcast to a bad Japanese production.
No, not at all.
But what he's talking about is the virtualbiblestudy.com.
Mm-hmm.
Every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. They have a little bit different format, Jacob and Greg Gwynn, but they do an outstanding job. They've been doing it for over 5 years now, and it works very well. And they use a little bit different streaming service, and that's why theirs will look a little bit different.
Right.
And you're exactly right. There's sometimes it's easier to listen than it is to sit and watch. But that's why we put the chat room over to the right of the viewing window so that you can actually watch and see what's going on at the same time.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate your support. I think we're up to episode 103 or 4 tonight. I think it's 103, and we've been doing this for over 2 years now. So, and hopefully many more studies to come. So. Well, we'd like to take the time to thank you so much for joining us for our study this evening. If you're watching this at a later point in time and you hear something that you have a question regarding, please let us know. You can send your question and comments to questions@scripturalway.org. Questions@scripturalway.org. Thank you very much, and Lord willing, we will see you back here again next week at this same time, 7:30 p.m. at scripturalway.org. Have a very wonderful week.